Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier, and thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Let me start with a photograph I took yesterday evening, 6:52 p.m. of Nairobi. It's the view out of my office, and it was actually beginning to rain, and when I got home there had been plenty of rain, and it was really actually quite intoxicating because it had gotten extremely hot here in Nairobi. I did an interview yesterday with Bonnie Tunya of CNBC. He's always very well informed and enjoyable to interview with. Have a look at that. That link is up on the website. Macro Thoughts. Beautiful art from a rogue Goldman Sachs algo. Tell me what you think. Home Thoughts. I picked up the little one this morning and stood her on her bed so that she was at my height, and said, "One day, darling, you will be as tall as me." And she was such a delight. And on that note, I went and listened to Hold On by Santana. I thought the sentiments were the right ones when you want to hold on tight. I like this from Wall Street Journal. Wild Udo and tilefish soup, one of several courses served at Miyamasu. Very tasty. Like some good Japanese food. Tristan McConnell, whom I follow on Twitter and is always a tremendous resource, says photographer Jang Ararap, Somalia in Transition, wins the POYI award, and it is rather an arresting photograph. The Russians are wary of becoming over-leveraged to China, and so they are very keen to try and diversify their portfolio and improve ties with the multitude of Asian powers. So said Andrew Kuchins. The Russians are wary of becoming over-leveraged. Ukraine crisis has prompted them to try to accelerate their Asian pivot. While Russia can't ignore China, it was Russia's biggest trading partner in 2013. The two hold regular military drills, and China is buying Russian gas. The government in Moscow is renewing efforts to find other nations in Asia to act as a hedge. Isn't it? It's the language, geopolitics, has suddenly become the language of the financial markets, and I don't know whether that's just simply a case of linguistics colliding because of all this oil and financial warfare. In recent months, it has reached out to middle powers. I don't think India would like to be called that, like India, Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, and Pakistan. Putin's accelerated Asian focus is a mix of military engagement and efforts to promote trade, the latter starting from a low base. Russia is only the 14th largest trading partner of the 10-member association of ASEAN, with two-way trade worth $19.9 billion in 2013, up 10% on the prior year. Russia's priority in relations with China, however, it doesn't want to put all of its eggs in that one basket. That is why it is also pursuing relations with India, Vietnam, two countries with difficult relations with China, and Japan can fit into that box as well. And my conclusions are taking into account, what I characterized as a very sophisticated financial and oil warfare that President Obama waged on Vladimir Putin, I thought never saw it coming and exposed his sort of lack of his situational awareness in geopolitics is extraordinary, but his financial awareness, I think, was found to be lacking. And the community organizer, President Obama, turned out to be a phenomenal exponent of what was a very sophisticated and cutting-edge art, in my opinion. However, on the ground in Ukraine, Putin played real hard ball, and I think repelled the oil war specialist. However, at a very big price. UAE warplanes operating out of Jordan have attacked targets inside ISIS-held territory in Syria. Details are still scant, but they reportedly targeted oil refineries. Greece bailout talks break down after Athens rejects unacceptable Eurozone demands. The link for that story is actually a video, it's worth watching. Euro is trading around 113.43. I'm very bearish the euro. I think it's had a little bit of a pop higher and it's about to go crashing down. Dollar index 94.32, Japanese yen 118.47, 118.55 now. Swissy 0.9234, pound is at 153.50 area. Aussie 0.7801, India rupee 62.257, South Korean 111.0112, Rial 282.99, Egyptian pound 762.21, South African rand 1164.20. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. We've been sort of playing a little bit of defense of late, but I think it might well surge tomorrow. I think Janet Yellen will be very hawkish, and I think the market's setting itself up, has set itself up for a less hawkish Fed, and I think we'll see a hawkish Fed. And I could take you back, my view remains steadfast about the dollar, and it's of the supreme conviction type, frankly. And I said on the 29th of September, it's a small window for sharks as the dollar rises. And then I was saying, the point I'm making is that the dollar has just started getting going. There will be blood in the water. There is a small window if we want to be the sharks. And I used the photograph I took of the shark in Dubai Mall to make my point visually. And on the 12th of January, I said the US economy is the comeback kid of 2015. Retail sales have been soft, but I think when you consider that each US family is getting a stimulus of about $750, I think retail sales are going to bounce back hard. Dollar index on the 12th of Jan, I said, is headed a lot higher by the dollar. And on the 9th of Feb, I talked about the king dollar. Talking about the non-farm payrolls report and how the US had posted the largest 3-month payroll gain going back all the way to 1997. And I was referring to the music of that era. Tony Braxton, Unbreak My Heart, Biggie's Hypnotize, and Elton John's Candle in the Wind, to make the point that the US economy had not created this number of jobs for an eternity. Euro dollar, we're in this 112.70, 115.34 range. We broke down a little bit yesterday. I think we're going to break down a lot further. And actually the announcement of a Greek deal might well be the catalyst for that breakdown, given that we've had all this time now to absorb it. The market has witnessed this before. This is via Reuters. It remembers the brinkmanship during the Greek debt negotiations of 2011. There are only 9 trading days left until the February 28th deadline, but some see that as enough time. Thus, we're not seeing the euro sold in a panic, not yet. On the other hand, tail risk is definitely rising. This is limiting bargain hunting of the euro by short-term players, and the currency will remain under selling pressure. I think it's headed to parity, as I said on the 12th of January. Commodity markets, gold, when I walked in, it was at 12.31, but when I had a look, it was much lower. And I think the top there is in for the year. Crude oil, I'll put up a 3-month chart. We've had a very strong rally last few weeks, but I think it's set up now to get creamed again. The European Union on Monday unveiled a $270 million aid package to support Zimbabwe's agriculture and health sectors, marking the resumption of direct funding after more than 10 years. We have made an important step in our cooperation with Zimbabwe, said the EU Ambassador Philip Van Damme at the signing ceremony for the aid programme. And we look forward to work in all the strategic and important areas covered by this national programme, with the aim to foster the political and economic reforms Zimbabwe is undertaking. Finance Minister Patrick Chinamasa welcomed the EU aid, but asked for the unconditional lifting of sanctions against our head of state and First Lady. The EU early this month said that Mugabe may nevertheless be authorized to travel to Europe under specific circumstances in his capacity as the current chairman of the African Union. Last year, the EU issued a special invitation for Mugabe to attend an EU-Africa summit in Brussels, but he turned it down in disgust when his wife was denied a visa to travel with him. Zimbabwe is open for business, said Chinamasa. The day it is, it will boom like you've never seen something boom before. Nishat, my other half, said he comes from Malawi. He told me that they used to go and visit Harare, and it was like the big city. And she still, the way she describes it, I think, one day I'm sure it will rebound and rebound big. President Kabila denounced the move by the UN during a meeting with Western ambassadors in the capital of Kinshasa, noting that his country was not under the supervision of the UN, said government spokesman Lambert Mendy. The Guardian is quoting a UK envoy: if Libya falls, it could be Somalia on the Mediterranean. Well, the toppling of Gaddafi made that moment a lot nearer. I wrote about this in October 2011, got Gaddafi's body in a freezer. What's the message, I asked. The raw feed of the capture and then the death of the Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi and his son Mu'tasim Gaddafi raised plenty of questions. The bodies are currently lying side by side, bloodied and half naked, on a filthy mattress in a meat locker in Misrata. John Donne wrote, therefore send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. I'm left thinking this dead Gaddafi business is one powerful message. And today Marshall McLuhan's prediction in the Gutenberg Galaxy, that was in 1962, that the new electronic interdependence recreates the world in the image of a global village. That's where Global Village comes from. Marshall McLuhan, 1962, has come to pass. The image of a bloodied Gaddafi, then of a dead Gaddafi in a meat locker, have flashed around the world via the mobile, YouTube and Twitter. Who's in charge of the messaging? Through the fog of real-time and raw footage, I note a very powerful message. The essence of that message being, don't fuck with us because you will end up dead in a trophy souvenir in a fridge. That same person is probably repeating Muammar's comment, I tell the coward crusaders I live in a place where you can't get me. I live in the hearts of millions, and asking, really, are you, or are you now very dead and in a meat locker? The point I'm making, and I'll put up a photograph of Gaddafi, which is an A24 media photograph, and it's very good, I think. The point I'm making is that there was no thinking of what would come after, and actually if you look at what came after, what you know is what was before was better. I'll put up a photograph of a crowd celebrating in Benghazi on the news of his overthrow. We learnt Egypt bombed ISIS targets in Libya in retaliation. That was yesterday. Coming to the African markets, I've said severally, but that monies that were originally marked with the tag destination Lagos have been rerouted to destination Johannesburg, Cairo and Nairobi. The South African all-share, for example, has surged a blistering 6.57% this year, and it's closed on several sessions, including the last one, at record highs. On that note, I'll put up a photograph of Kyalami, which we visited twice, and it's a fabulous, evocative kind of place, and plus driving very fast Jaguars around that racetrack, and I must have been enjoying myself. I've been driving my Jaguar to and from the office, and it's such a pleasant experience. Dollar rand 11.64.12. I'm in two minds. I think ultimately it goes to 12. President Sisi, I'll put up a photograph of him meeting the Coptic Pope Tawadros II after the news of the beheadings. Egyptian pound 762.87. Egyptian stock market has retreated a little bit from its 2015 highs, but it's up 7.42% year to date. The Nigerian all-share, meanwhile, is the worst performing stock index in the world. It's down 19.99% year to date, although it popped up 0.52% yesterday. The central bank intervened to defend the beleaguered Naira on Monday by selling dollars below its official band for the second time, a sign the bank could weaken the currency to save its dwindling foreign reserves. Of course, it crashed through the important level of 200 last week. The bank sold dollars at a special auction on Monday at 198 Naira to the dollar. Banned banks from reselling dollars bought at the currency auction to other banks. The special FX auctions are not sustainable in the current setting until and unless oil prices rise significantly. There is little the authorities can do to prevent the Naira from weakening. Fact. Monday and Friday they sold, but basically the currencies, they devalued at 8% earlier. They're saying they won't devalue the currency, but would stabilize the Naira, but they burned through $1.1 billion over the past 9 days trying to prop up the currency. Naira non-deliverable forwards have 12-month Naira non-deliverable forwards are at 268 to 275, which is a huge devaluation. Nigerian dollar bond yields are trading over Kenya's, which is interesting in itself. And I wrote about this. It really was a freight train, and we could see it coming. On the 10th of November, I said, turning to the markets in Africa, the Nigerian Naira and the all-share index have been wagadoogooed, I said, by the collapse in the price of oil. And what I meant is what we're seeing now. 19th of November, I called for 200. January 21st, I said 220. I said Emefili's finger in the dike strategy is about to be overwhelmed by a tsunami, and I don't think that was wrong. I wrote about African markets over the weekend, and I quoted Edwin Lefebvre, who's one of my favorite writers. He says, you can spot, for instance, where the buying is only a trifle better than the selling. A battle goes on in the stock market, and the tape is your telescope. You can depend upon it. 7 out of 10 cases, he's not wrong. That is how I first came to take an interest in the message of the tape. The fluctuations were from the first associated in my mind with upward or downward movements. Of course, there is always a reason for fluctuations, but the tape does not concern itself with the why and the wherefore. It doesn't go into explanations. I didn't ask the tape why when I was 14, and I don't ask it today at 40. In my case 49. The reason for what a certain stock does today may not be known for 2 or 3 days or weeks or months. What the dickens does that matter? Your business with the tape is now, not tomorrow. The reason can wait, but you must act instantly or be left. Time and again I see this happen. Then I referred to the African markets, and I was saying that money was being displaced from Nigeria coming to Egypt, Nairobi and Johannesburg. Nairobi all-time highs every session, last 6. A similar story in South Africa and Egypt on an absolute tear. I did an interview at the back end of last week with Charles Island after the release of EABL's first half earnings. I didn't realise it was going to be so lengthy, but we get on and we were sort of chit-chatting about all kinds of things, but I hope it's interesting, and it's linked up on the website if you care to have a look. EABL has surged 8.4415% year to date and is at a fresh 2014 high. As I've said, my price target this year is 400. I'll also put up a photograph of the first half earnings which I attended. The TPS Serena issued a profits warning this morning. It was actually unchanged on the year before today's profits warning. It would be interesting to see how the price behaves today. But it's now on a trading P of 10.725. I think this might well have been already baked into the price. I did an interview with Mahmoud Jan Mohammed, who's a friend, and was at the end of last year. Well worth looking at. We were talking about tourism, the challenges, and really he was signalling the problems at that point in time. He's an old friend, and I'll put up a photograph of him and myself. And on that note, I'll also mention that one of the finest properties the Serena has is on the lake shore of Lake Almantaita. A really lovely property, and we had such a lovely time down there. I'll put up a photograph of Hannah and her mum riding a horse around the lake. End of last year, I said tourism sector will need a calm 2015 to register a rebound of the tourist economy, which is estimated at more than $1 billion a year. And I said, which I'm experiencing as I write this at the Swahili Beach Hotel in the south coast, listening to the Indian Ocean breeze and anticipating my boat trip tomorrow to see the dolphins. We didn't see any dolphins this time round, which was very unfortunate, but Hannah and I saw a lovely turtle, and we followed it around, and it was great fun. And I said, that tourism will remain a drag on GDP this year. There is no silver bullet. Katrina's written about the falling oil price adds spur to Kenyan grassroots. Kenyan farmer Anne Lidonde will plant more spinach than usual this year, and it is all thanks to the collapse in global oil prices. The middle-aged mother of two is one of the more obscure beneficiaries of a falling oil price, which the IMF predicts will depress growth rates for sub-Saharan Africa to 4.9%, almost 1% lower than previous forecasts. But I told you that a while back, with key economies such as Nigeria relying on oil sales for revenues. Everything is down. Petrol charges are down, unga, maize flour is down, fertilizer is down. I'm planning the savings back into the farms. It was Lindondi. She boarded a minibus taxi that slashed fares by 20% this month. I've been talking about this for a while, and I said to Katrina, I think the oil price drop is going to be a massive stimulus at the grassroots. The economy outperforms when the average Joe who's earning not very much has more in his pocket, and there's a very big correlation there, actually, and I take you back to 2007. As an importer of petroleum, I wrote on the 26th of January, the sharply reduced price will provide a significant stimulus to our economy. It is very grassroots because everyone buys fuel. Kenya shilling been relatively well behaved of late, 91.55. Nairobi all share up 5.87% at a record. It's closed at a record yesterday and every session last week. NSE 20s at 19-week highs, up 4.79% year to date. Kakuzi closed at a fresh record high. It's up a blistering 47.222% year to date. Crown Paints closed at a record high. It's up 43.24% year to date. I attended a World Bank function for executive directors from Washington, and World Bank Kenya tweeted about it, so I'll put up that image. And then finally, there's a link for if you want to check any share price that's listed at the stock exchange, just click on that link, which is at the bottom of Rich Wrap-Ups. Once again, thank you for stopping by.